I'd like to call this meeting of the Town Council of Centreville, Maryland to order this April 20th, 2023. First, I'd like to recognize the absence of our Council President, Steve Klein, and Vice President Ashley Kaiser. They are excused this evening due to business that they have. We will begin our meeting as we typically do with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence for our military and public safety personnel, past and present. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. We have a couple sets of minutes before us this evening. We have our April 6th budget work session, the April 6th meeting, the April 13th budget work session. We'll take these in order.
Those are, they'll be reviewed and considered at the May 4th council meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry, it does say that. I apologize.
We'll wait for the full council for that. Yeah.
Yes. All right, so we'll proceed with the closed session statement for April 13th. I'd like to invite the clerk to do so.
The town council met in closed session on Thursday, April 13th, 2023 at 7:30 p.m. at the Vincent Building, 110 Vincent Street, Planning and Zoning Meeting Room to discuss personnel in accordance with the Maryland Open Meetings Act. 5 members of the town council voted to close the session. The authority to close the session is found in Section 3-305 of the General Provisions article. The town council discussed the following topics: personnel, discussed board and commission members' contract positions, actions by consensus agreed to not seek reappointment for a board or commission member. The following members and staff were present: Stephen K. Klein, President; Ashley H. Kaiser, Vice President; Eric B. Johnson; Daniel B. Worth; Jim A. Beecham, members; Charles Chip Kugel, Town Manager; Carolyn Brinkley, Town Clerk. The meeting adjourned at 8 p.m.
Thank you. We'll proceed with the Citizens Forum, the first one of our 2 this evening. And I see that we have signed up Jordan Kafka and Kim Agee. Did I say that correctly? Yes. Wonderful. If you would come forward. You guys are welcome to speak at the microphone there or sit at the table here. And my understanding from what you signed up to talk about plastic-free Queen Anne's County.
Yes.
Welcome tonight. If you don't mind, start by just telling us where you live.
Okay, so I'm Kim Agee, and I live in Centreville, just outside of town. And this is Jordan Kafka. She also lives in Centreville, but she lives outside of town also. And Jordan, I'm a teacher at Queen Anne's County High School, and Jordan is the president of our environmental club, and she has some thoughts to share with you this evening.
And thank you both for your service.
So, today we are presenting our petition to ban single-use plastic bags. According to the World Counts, we use over 100 million tons of plastic every year. 10% of those bags end up in the ocean. Did you know that it can take up to 1,000 years for a plastic bag to break down? Over 1 million marine animals are killed each year due to plastic debris in the ocean, says the Sea Turtle Conservancy. As a county, we can help to reduce those numbers by banning the single use of plastic bags. Did you know that plastic bags contribute to clogging our roadway drains? Or how about plastic bags are not accepted by the QAC's recycling program or the curbside haulers? Replacing plastic bags with cloth reusable bags is a cheap and easy way for people to do. We just need to encourage people to do it. Banning the use of plastic bags in stores would encourage this environmentally friendly practice. There are multiple reasons as to why QAC's use of plastic bags should be reduced, and these are just some of them. We have also brought signatures from many of our classmates who would like to see this action taken in our community. Thank you.
Wonderful. You said you brought a petition this evening. Is
Yes.
that something that we could take a copy of? Is that the original?
Yes.
It is.
Would you like us to get it back to you after we make a copy?
We made it for you all.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you for taking the time to do that. I think you presented to a group this evening that very much shares that vision. So thank you. Well, those were the only folks that signed up. Is there anybody else that would like to speak at the first closed session? Okay. Wonderful. All right. We will move on to our appearances this evening. First, we'll begin with the 23, Tattoos for a Cause. Keith Edmonds from Ink or Dye Studio, if you would come forward.
Have a seat, please.
Then we'll be able to hear you and the folks at home as well.
Thank you, Council, for having me. My name is Keith Evans with Ink or Dye Studio. I am here today to pitch an event that my business and the town, the other businesses in the town have come together and decided to do something regarding recovery awareness. Oh yeah, that's fine. So I have some notes here. I'm gonna look at these notes.
Take your time.
The Recovery Awareness Foundation is an organization that I've worked with in the past with a tattoo parlor that I used to work at, and then when we opened Ink or Dye Studio in Centreville, we decided to continue with working with the Recovery Awareness Foundation and the Tattoos for a Cause events that we hosted for them. Recovery Awareness Foundation is an awesome organization that uses events like ours to create funding for recovery housing, Narcan training, helping homeless people get off the street and seek help. The 100% of the donations are given to these people in need. Newton Gentry is the founder, also a close friend of mine who wanted to be here today, but he had a outreach program with another organization called the Drug Free All-Stars, who will also be participating in the event, and that is the other side of the Recovery Awareness Foundation, which is a youth educational and outreach program to help prevent kids from getting into drug use. And so both of those organizations will be joining Ink or Dye Studio in raising money for the purposes of getting help to those in need. What we've done is contacted Queen Anne's County, Lee Edgar, who's given us permission to use the courthouse lawn for the event, which takes place on September 30th. The next step was to ask permission to use Lawyers Row. We've worked closely, my assistant Summer and Carol here, who's been a great help to us, is who got us in front of you today to kind of just let you know what we hope and would need from you guys or from the town. And so the use of Lawyers Row would provide us with a lot more space for vendors, and we've already had dozens and dozens of vendors reach out to us wanting to participate in this event. We've contacted all of the businesses in Centreville and surrounding Centreville to see if they would be willing to participate and kind of just give them a heads up that this is going to happen. And everyone has accepted this with open arms and wants to help. All of the businesses along Main Street have donated something for a raffle and are really excited about it. The use of Lawyers Row would be for any vendors that want to set up a tent, table, and kind of help draw the crowd away from the tattoo shop. Our tattoo shop's only so big. We did this in 2019 and we tried to contain it in the tattoo shop and ended up flooding into the street and into the back parking lot. And so when we did it this time, we decided that we needed help from the town. So because our following has grown exponentially and the opioid awareness and epidemic has also grown exponentially, and so people are more on board with it. The degree of separation between, people who just know someone that's affected by drug use and the people who are affected by drug use is much smaller than it used to be. So, sadly, but I think that more people want to get involved and do something about it now, and so we expect a much larger crowd than we had last time. Right now, we have over 800 responses to the event, and we haven't done very much promoting because so much was still in the air. Like, we don't know if we can get Lawyers Row yet. So once we have all of those things in place or not, then we'll know what steps to take from that point on.
And Keith, remind us, the 30th, is that a Saturday, Sunday?
It is a Saturday.
Saturday.
Yeah.
And the time frame of the event?
So the event is from 11 to 8, with the focus being at Ingrid Studio. Most of the money that's generated for the event will probably take place from tattoos. We have several guest artists coming from all over the Eastern Shore and out of state. We have several responses from out of state also. So it's a great thing for the town. It'll get some exposure for all these local businesses. And it's a long time because tattoos take a long time. And so I think we have room for 9 artists. And with 9 artists, we should be able to do as many tattoos as are wanted or needed that day within the time frame, which we set from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. I think that if we do use Lawyers Row, we would want to start setting up around 8 a.m. So that way the street can be shut down by 9. That gives trucks and cars availability to drop things off and get out before the street gets shut down, and that way the vendors are all set up. There is live music set up. We have been given permission to use the corral behind the courthouse for electricity. We have an audio guy that's volunteered all of his equipment to set up a podium for public speaking. The health department has volunteered their services with Narcan training, several like alternative medicine, massage therapists, and businesses alike will be here to just kind of be available for anyone that wants information, needs information, or wants to contribute in any way. It also, the use of the courthouse lawn and Lawyers Row gives people something to do while they're waiting for their tattoo, because there's going to be a long line and there's going to be a wait, and I think that it will ensure those people's safety and instead of a mob walking around in the street. You know what I mean? So that's pretty much all I have.
It sounds very exciting, and I know the buzz on the street is very positive, and a lot of folks are talking about it. So if you're ready, we can kind of open it up to the floor with the other council members here.
Absolutely. Any
Any
questions you have,
comments,
I'd be happy to
concerns?
answer.
Questions?
Sounds like a worthy event to me, so I've
Thank
heard
you.
about it
Yeah.
before, so appreciate that. Kind of looking forward to it.
Hope you
So-
attend.
I probably won't get a tattoo, but
There'll be lots of other stuff going on, cornhole tournaments, food, and we're doing a raffle. We've had a lot of donations with like baskets, gift cards, and things like that to raffle off. So it'll be fun, regardless
Yeah,
of
sounds
whether
like
or
it.
not you get a tattoo.
good.
Any objections on the council right now to the closure of the street on September 30th?
No objection here.
No objection. Is
I-
Lawyer Row going to be sufficient? Because I guess it's possible to close Broadway as well, so.
I think.
I mean, it's something to consider, so.
And then maybe if the event continues to grow and you're doing it
Yeah.
annually, we have that kind of in the back pocket to do in
Yeah.
the future.
That's the hope.
Yeah.
I think we can decide this just with a consensus, right? We don't need a motion and a
We
vote.
usually do a motion.
Well, then I will invite that now. Is there a motion to approve the closure Saturday for an 11 to 8 p.m. event, the 30th of September, with a setup of 8 a.m. and in coordination with our police department? Before, actually, I entertain a motion. Any objections from the police department or Public Works? Anything else going on contractually or maintenance-wise that would make that an issue? Negative, okay.
I'll make that motion.
All right, we have a motion.
I'll second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining, no. And I heard everybody loud and clear, so we won't do a roll call vote, but the street closure is approved. And just let us know if there's anything else that we can do, and just good luck.
Thank you so
I'll be
much.
out there that day, so as I told you before we started.
I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks to our Main Street manager, Carol, for helping with the project. Great. And speaking of our Main Street manager, we have an appearance by Carol DiAgostino to talk about grant opportunities.
Right.
Good
I
evening,
am
Carol.
Going to give and I'll give you a nod when you.
Oh, okay.
She's great.
Am I just passing one down?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
When I tell it.
But not yet,
But not,
Yeah.
because
no sooner than that.
we'll be distracted.
I'm nervous now.
All right, well, hello, good evening. I am coming before you to give you a quick update on some stuff, but mostly about grant opportunities and fundraising opportunities. So I don't know if you recall, but last year, the Main Street program in Maryland decided to look at the Main Street Improvement Grant in a different way. And that different way was to look at the different types of main streets and do allotments. So for instance, we're a designated main street. The allotment for designated main streets is $25,000. And there's affiliate main streets, they would get 10, and the Baltimore City Main Street neighborhoods get 8,000. So you still need to fill out the grant application, and you still need to do reports, but you're not all competing against each other on this pockets of money. Okay. So it's a little different way to look at it. We still have not received last year's money, but we're still able to spend it, and then we'll get it.
It's the American way.
Yes. Interestingly enough, the application is due in 2 weeks. I'll refresh your memory on what we did last year. So my thing is, how can I continuously push out more work supporting our businesses? So I made that the thrust of last year's application, and things like how can I better promote our businesses and take some things that they would love to do, they just don't have the time or the expertise to do. So I made that the thrust of last year's project budget. I also put in money for the wayfinding signage, which we haven't spent because the master plan is still at the state. We'll spend that too, though.
Is there any projection at this point on when you think we're going to get something back?
They're
from them?
having another meeting about it next week, so we should hear shortly.
Imminently.
Anyway, I put in that budget a lot of different types of contractors, like content writers, photographers, videographers, someone that could help doing social media campaigns. And also we had 2 new expenditures because Main Street now has a sub-site off the town's website. So there was a fee for that, and then also I bought an add-on for a business listing. So those were new expenses that we didn't have in my existing budget. So what I'm thinking about for this year is I'd like to stay on that, how do we continuously better support our businesses? Carol, you're getting the cue. So what you're going to be looking at are examples of how that has worked so far. So for instance, with the alibi, I went ahead, drafted a press release for them, got it out, and it got a lot distributed. The Centreville circular one, that is Richard Graves' CPA, who acquired another CPA business. So that became an article in the circular, then it's going to get distributed as a press release. So take things, repurpose them, and got an awful lot of ink for the alibi. Now, you may say, who reads newspapers? But all that gets processed digitally as well, so then it becomes a social media post. So I'd like to continue to do much more of that, knowing that there are times, a few times through the year, where I am totally maxed out of time. So I need to get some folks to assist me to make that happen. So that's what I want to continue to do. What I'd like to do as far as the budget adjustments for that $25,000 is I'd like to put a line item in there this year for interns and subcontractors so that people can assist me in these times where my time's really maxed out, so that we continuously get things out to our businesses, and also look at doing some business promotions, perhaps seasonal. So maybe if we did something in the summer, it would include the farmer's market and things like that. So I'm looking at putting a line item in that budget. But again, the thrust of this money that we get allocated for the Main Street program, I'd really like to keep the focus on our businesses and to create some more turnkey solutions. I'll tell you, Richard Graves came in right after that happened, and his new partner, so part of that was Greg Whitby became partner, so I brought extra copies because his wife does my hair. And I said, oh, did you need extra? She said, we walk down the street and that's all people talk about. So, it's really quite nice and refreshing that the circular does have that impact, even though it's quarterly. So if the Main Street program can continuously spin off those kinds of things to create solutions, because our businesses weren't advertising. So I'd like to continue to do much more of that. So that is my thrust for the Main Street improvement application this year, and I'd like to seek your approval to go ahead and flesh that out and apply for the grant.
Would that need to be integrated with the budget that we've been talking about over the last few weeks?
They're extra things.
Okay.
So it's in addition to what is already, it will allow me to do additional things.
Should it be part of the budget?
I would be afraid to, because who knows? They may back off of it, you know?
There's next year.
Yes. I would like to keep it
I guess
simple.
we can amend the budget
Yeah.
if it gets
Yeah.
approved, so.
So right now, it's a trajectory that you're on, but we don't necessarily have a dollar amount that we're thinking would be an increase.
I'm only afraid that this is the way the Main Street program has been doing it for the last couple of years. They may just say, no, we're not going to do that anymore. I mean, I have no idea.
Exactly.
Right.
And this is very much standalone.
Yeah, got it.
Okay.
Any additional discussion?
And I think
or-
that this one, which that you haven't had grants for many, many years that help with operating
Yes.
costs. So this kind of helps increase that.
And it's grant and operate and capital, so it's like found money.
Well, and you're a one-person show. You do have a lot of support from the rest of the town staff, of course, on events and different projects on which you work. But I know you are killing yourself, and the thought of you having support so that you're not spread quite as thin is music to my ears. So
Well, it's about working smarter, not harder.
exactly,
You know.
exactly. While you're up, though, I do have a quick question that came up in the
Sure.
community recently, and this is a simple question, I think. For facade grants, what's the geographical restriction on that? So are there places sort of at the southern end of town as you come in, or is it really the historic district?
So-
It is the central business
Central
district.
business
Yeah.
district.
With the exception of Mama Maria's, was it Mama Maria's?
Mama Mia's.
Mama Mia's, I'm sorry.
You're mixing your towns.
I am.
Their food's good,
Extended
too.
it to Mama Mia's for 1 year for something I think they wanted to do, or someone, I can't remember, but it is strictly CBD. No, I'm sorry, we extended down a little bit for
To pass Fayette for the Arts Council.
Arts Council, yes. That's what we did.
And then how far north do we go,
It just,
roughly?
North is, where is I think it hits right on the other side
Goodwill.
of Danny's, over to the,
Goodwill Firehouse,
what's that?
Goodwill Firehouse
Yeah,
and down.
Goodwill, and yeah, this building is included. I think there's actually, it kind of cuts at a diagonal across the parking lot over there, so.
And that's the only downside with the Main Street program. There are some things that can only be implemented in the Main Street program in the designated area. The work that I do, I extend to any business within the town, but there's sometimes, because of the money, has other implications that I can't But yes.
Well, do you need anything else from us tonight?
No, and then I have some other quick things.
Just
Yes.
if everybody is okay with her applying for the grant?
All right.
Absolutely.
Any objection?
No?
No, I
objection.
think by consensus, yeah, please press.
Okay, thank you.
And then whatever else you got, go right ahead.
Okay. The other thing is more of a fundraising thing. Anyone connected to nonprofits, this may be of interest. The NASCAR Foundation is doing a give-a-thon in honor of their 75th anniversary. So what they're doing is a 75-hour campaign, very similar to like Giving Tuesday. So that is starts May 16th. By virtue of the fact that Main Street has some funds at Chesapeake Charities, we can also qualify as a nonprofit using their 990.
Okay.
I looked into it. There are no costs involved to us. There would be no costs. Basically, you sign up to a portal and you basically take advantage of all the things that they're doing to promote it. Monies go into the portal, and if you're your own 501c3, it goes right into your account. In the case with Main Street, if we move ahead with this, it would go into Chesapeake Charities account and filtered into the Main Street Fund. Anyone who signs up for the program gets all the advantages. For instance, they're going to be promoting it. They've been promoting it since February, but you'll be part of all the promotions if you bring in a minimum of $750. Anything else they generate, like matching funds and matching donations, you'd also be able to take advantage of that. So I don't know how successful it will be. This is, as far as I know, their first time doing this. When I did the webinar to find out more, at that point, there were 400 nonprofits signed up. Initially, they were looking for nonprofits within 100 miles of a sanctioned NASCAR track, but now they're pretty much just going for the whole country. So.
Well, apparently we have a mini NASCAR track in our section of town, so I think based on previous discussions, we qualify.
I think that when you look at the schools, and yes, that's just very true.
Forgive me.
So anyway, it's an option. I never want to turn away opportunities to bring in money. I don't know if anything will transpire from it, but
It's worth a shot, right?
the more money we have, the more we can do.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have confidence in the organization, then yes.
Okay, thank you. And just a couple of other reminders. We have our ribbon cutting for Benson and Mangold Real Estate next Tuesday, 1 o'clock. And the farmer's market's going to open Sunday, May 7th. And that's all I had.
That's plenty.
Yeah,
You did just say May 7th for the farmer's market?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for everything that you're doing.
sure. Thank you. Thanks very
Let us
much.
know what
Thanks
you
for your
need.
support. Okay, great, thanks.
Great. Our third appearance tonight, Tim McCluskey, proposed changes to the zoning ordinance regarding digital signs. Please come up.
Thanks, Council, for allowing me to get here. I made a slide deck. I don't know how good I am at this, so I'm not sure if it's going to actually come through as I put it together, but we'll see. So I'm here actually, a couple of, last meeting, there was a discussion on modifying or allowing potential additional LED or electronic signs. And I'm here to ask that you do not modify the zoning code to ask to add any additional LED or electronic signs. This is not about the Legion. This is not about the fire department. This is about the town of Centreville. This is about the unintended consequences that will actually come if you modify the code to allow for any additional electronic or LED signs. I love the Legion. I fully support their mission. I enjoy their dinners, Memorial Day, Veterans Day. I've been to all of those. Same thing with the fire department, and there are many other community organizations here in Centreville that are worthy as well. What do I do, just hit next?
I think, yep.
All right. So I wanted to just very briefly go over some of the history of the electronic LED signs here in town. Our zoning code, if you're not familiar, is a permitted use only. So if a use is not specifically allowed or permitted in the zoning ordinance, it's prohibited. In 2008, the Goodwill Fire LED sign was improperly approved. In 2010, design standards were adopted by the council, gone through the planning commission, and they specifically prohibited electronic/LED signs. 2015, the Shore United LED sign was improperly approved as well. That actually triggered the planning commission to comprehensively rewrite the sign portion of the zoning code. They spent over 2 years doing that, invested over 100 hours, including the time of the town attorney, town planners, to comprehensively rewrite the sign code, and again, specifically prohibit LED/electronic signs. There were multiple public hearings at both the Planning Commission and the council level. Actually, in April of 2018, prior to the final draft of the ordinance being written, I actually met with the Board of Education staff, including Sid Pinder, to ask about electronic LED signs at the schools here in town, and he said there was no interest in putting them anywhere there. The resulting ordinance specifically, again, prohibited electronic signs, but the 4 existing signs, Goodwill, Shore United, and 2 gas stations, were grandfathered in, but they were considered to be non-conforming. The regulations furthermore stated that the message change could not occur more than once every 5 minutes. No movement or illusion of movement was allowed, no pictorial or photographic images, signs in or adjacent to or across the street from residentially used parcels must be turned off between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. So this is a video that I took the other night at 10:15 p.m. on Monday, April 17th at Goodwill, which is across the street from residential parcels. And there's also a photo right below it of the Shore United sign from 10:09 p.m. on Monday, April 17th, which is also across the street from a residentially used parcel. The county also has an illegal electronic sign in the form of a trailered message board, which is advertising county jobs. Not only is it an illegal electronic sign, it's an off-site sign. I mean, there's so many things that are wrong with that. And it's across the street from a residential zone as well. There's at least one illegal electronic sign downtown in the Central Business District as well. So if we're not enforcing the current law, why do we want to expand it as well? When the town does go to enforce these laws, the perception will be that the town is the bad guy. Every single time. Every single time. And if you expand that, it's going to be again. All right, let's see the next one. So if there was an added expense thought to be associated with these signs and therefore a barrier to entry, that's not what's happening. As you can see, this is a sign that's actually up in Elkton, Maryland. Sign companies are in the business to sell signs. Financing is available. Electronic sign is easy and cheap for any budget. I looked at all of the sign permits from 2015 to 2017 before the ordinance passed in Queen Anne's County to allow for electronic signs. The average cost over all that time was $2,200 per sign. Since then, the average cost has risen to over $6,000 per sign. Now, that's not saying that all signs are electronic, but just the average sign before and then the average sign after is now over $6,000. I don't agree that regulating these signs via the special exception process is advised. Special exception, again, is a permitted use when clearly defined criteria and conditions are met. Writing these conditions so specific as to allow for only one property in a zone is problematic, and it's going to result in unintended consequences and additional signs. There are many worthy organizations in Centreville, and you only want to allow for one. How are you going to make that choice? What happens when the next worthy community organization applies? So here's an example of a similar Eastern Shore town. This is Elkton, Maryland. Elkton, Maryland was incorporated in 1787, similar to the town of Centreville. It's a little bit larger than Centreville. Where all those signs are, that is Route 213 in Elkton. It's the same exact scenic bypass that we have here on Route 18 and 213 in Centreville. And the distance from the first sign to the last sign is 2.1 miles, which is a similar distance from the Centreville Food Lion to Hope Road, or from the Food Lion to Queen Anne's County High School. So as you can see, these signs are everywhere. One is directly across from a historic Trinity Episcopal Church, which was built in 1867. The majority of these signs are in zone C2, or what their equivalent C2 would be. So what about Centreville? Where would they go here in Centreville? At the last meeting, it was discussed they would not be allowed in the Central Business District, but they would be allowed possibly in C2. So anything that's in C2 is also allowed in C3. So now it's being opened up to C3 as well. There was also talk for allowing for government, institutional, and schools. And many of these uses are actually in residential areas. So this slide shows institutional, government, and schools. If this ordinance is modified within a couple of years, these LED signs could be everywhere. Centreville is too small of a town, and these uses are too concentrated to allow for electronic signs. The best intentions often expose unintended consequences that are going to have a profound effect on the town. Our charm comes from the small town historic feel. I realize that it's not an easy decision. I do understand that your intentions are noble. And these signs are a distraction. The last thing we need while driving is another distraction. Please don't allow this ordinance, don't introduce this ordinance, don't allow additional electronic signs or any further expanded use. Happy to answer any questions. I know that I sent a PDF to Carolyn. She can send that out to you guys as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
They have it in their packet.
Great.
Any questions or comments?
The town attorney, Sharon Vandenberg, and I are painfully aware of when we worked on that last sign ordinance. It was a heavy lift to get it right, or as right as we could get it.
Right.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you for the time you put into it. Do we have, other than Goodwill, and I'm guessing Shore United was grandfathered in, are there other signs that have been grandfathered in?
See, I was going to say Citgo and Acme.
And really, everything else then, just as Mr. McCluskey pointed out, is out of code. So I'm a big fan of, just as you had indicated, you know, if we're going to have things in writing that are approved as our ordinances, code, then we need to enforce them. And I realize this is a challenge in that some of these folks that have been using digital signage illegally, dare I use the term, have been doing so for quite a while. So is that, the town manager, if you don't mind answering this, is that on the radar screen right now?
It is.
Is there?
Sharon and I have worked on I'll call it the penalty phase of the code, and I've got some other ideas that are a little more of a light touch that I need to talk to her about.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
The bright blip.
And I'll say some additional thoughts on this when we get down to old business where this is covered. We're not presenting an ordinance this evening, but I do want to give some additional information tonight. So no other questions?
In her absence, we should be channeling Council Vice President Ashley Kaiser, because she is a strong advocate of enforcement of our regulations that we have on the books.
Absolutely.
I give her credit for
That's
that.
exactly what I was thinking. So again, thank you for taking the time to put that together. I know that was a lot of work. We'll proceed now to old business. We have before us Resolution 05-2023, travel policy for town council members. As an administrative item, it is sponsored by the council president in his absence. I will address that. As I get my attachments in the right order here. They were in the right order. That's not a criticism. I got them out of order, Madam Clerk. All right, so have the other council members here tonight had a chance to take a look at this? Is there any discussion? And I don't know, is this a matter where, is this Crystal, somebody that could just give us a quick blurb as a reminder on?
So this was a request by Council President Klein, and then when it was presented, there were a few more questions, and Ms. Luffman was asked to
That's right.
add
I'm sorry.
additional recommendations to the travel policy. So she did the recommendations. I didn't include them in the actual resolution because I didn't, you know, if there was something the council wanted or didn't want, then, and I don't know if you want to discuss and table till the next meeting or whatever, or add.
My sense was, and correct me if I'm wrong, both staff up here and my fellow council members, that we sort of had consensus around all of this. So unless there's an objection from this group, I think we can vote on this tonight.
The only thing I want to add is, because I didn't make a note and I thought about it after I'd sent this to Carolyn and after she sent the packet, of course, was possible if you wanted like a payroll deduction if needed over a certain extended period of time to help cover some of the costs, like for a council member could do something like that as well.
Okay.
So that would be one other thing outside of what you see on here.
I think my question from the last time we looked at this was how we deal with the mechanics of it, where, you know, would a council member request to have an encumbrance made against the fund in advance so we don't wind up?
That would, my recommendation would be during the budget season, if council is aware of any conferences for the year that would directly involve them and benefit the town than to put it in during the budget season, so then it's already encumbered.
Is that an addition that could be made then to this?
It's-
That's in
it's
there,
in
right?
there,
yeah.
That's right.
And I don't know if you want to make a motion tonight. The recommendations that Karen did aren't included in the actual resolution. So my thought was if there were any additions or changes or deletions to the recommendations, then I would go ahead and implement them into the actual resolution.
Oh, okay.
And I can add the one about a payroll deduction. That way, if it's more expensive and they want to have it come out of their council check once a month at $50 for 6 months, that would be an option as well. File a waiver for a hardship if it's something they can't pay for up front, those sorts of situations, but.
Any thoughts from the
Well, how's it going to work this year? I mean, we have
Yeah, we're
MML
beyond
coming
the
up. in a-
budget this year, and
Yeah,
so
we have
there is
budget for
a,
this, right?
yeah,
So-
there is a
and I already-
line right
yeah.
now in your budget for travel, so if,
Okay, and I already paid for registration, so, okay,
Yeah, this won't affect really until
till,
FY '24.
yeah.
okay. But do we have to request that we're going to go to MML during the budget season next year?
Yes.
We're just going to,
Budget we're working on now.
We have
will
some
apply to
allocation.
Next summer's conference, yes.
right, we have some money allocated for next year already.
There is just, yeah, we
Right.
did have, we lowered it a little bit to add to the planning and zoning, but there's still enough in there to cover one or two possible if in FY '24 it was chosen for folks to go to the MML.
Okay, yeah, we'll have to figure out a way to encumber that, as you said, so we,
Usually, once a year, we try to do a budget amendment if required. So at that point, come March or April, if we're looking at or thinking we're going to need an amendment, we could do it at that time.
MML is fairly straightforward.
yeah.
There's a time frame where we know it's going to be, the summer's going to be in June, it's going to be in Ocean City. I think fall one rotates every 4 years. So I think that was in Annapolis last year, which I went to, and that's just, you drive back and forth. So it's a little bit different. And then one location's Hunt Valley, and I'm not sure of the other two, but it changes.
Just making a quick note here. So my question then to my fellow council members would be, there's 5 bullets here. Are we generally in agreement with these where we could, table this until the next meeting with a recommendation to our council president, vice president, that we have consensus or we're all in favor of these 5, and then the additional item you mentioned, Councilman Beecham, that the prior to identified trainings would generate an encumbrance.
And we can add the payroll deduction if you wanted.
The payroll deduction, that's right.
I will tell you, for my part, I didn't think the system was broken before, so I'm not real emotional about this resolution.
Got it. But do you have any objections necessarily to anything?
No objections.
I don't have any objections.
Got it. Okay. Well, why don't we reflect for the minutes that we had consensus on these with those additional 2 items, and then I'll also update the council president, vice president as to that in preparation for the next meeting. Next up, sign ordinance, digital signage, sponsored by Councilmember Johnson, myself. So, again, I appreciate the work that Tim McCluskey did on his slides. I know there's a lot of history, and I will admit that as folks have talked to me about interest in some level of digital signage, I have been very reluctant up to this point until the last meeting to really bring it up. And it really did come from not just talking to the Legion, and of course the public safety impact of being able to have just-in-time messaging. If we had an active assailant scenario, active law enforcement situation, folks needing to shelter in place, stuff like that. I know the Legion specifically, and I would argue probably most of the civic organizations, if they were to have something like this, would be willing to allow those signs to be used for the public benefit. I did have a recent conversation with Sid Pender as recently as last week, and the high school, on behalf of the school board, is interested, or I should say public schools is interested still in having a digital signage. So we've got those 2 organizations in particular interested, and my discussions go well beyond those 2. I share the desire to have some sort of limitation. I know, like anything, you open it up, and then where does it go? Does it snowball into something else? So we had a consensus at the last meeting, at least to proceed with some sort of draft that we could look at in the very near future. I've spoken with Sharon. I know she's looking at some language. So after Sharon and I have a chance to talk, we'll circulate that, and we'll bring it, to the forefront here to discuss further. Any questions beyond that or comments from council?
How do you envision the emergency notification actually working? I mean, it's not like all these signs would be connected to some central place. Somebody would have to call up and say, hey, could you change your sign to say this? Or, how would that?
Yeah, the signage that I know Mr. Pender, the COO of the school system, and then the president of the Legion in particular, there's software that you can do it basically from your cell phone.
Yeah.
So these folks would have basically like a mutual aid agreement in place that says, you can call this person. And so chief of police, for example, might have that number that I can call Sid or whoever it is. And if I want to get something on the sign, then they would be able to do that. So that doesn't mean that's going to happen. It's just something that I've overheard in these discussions. So that's one of the reasons that I'm supportive of that. I've just been in too many communities where there is the absence of that and would have helped. And as I indicated at the last council meeting, that's my background, that's my jam, emergency management, and I've written way too many after actions and then read like the after actions from 9/11 all the way up to present. And the number one issue for every single one of these is communication, poor communication. This isn't the only way to fix that. So we have interest from the community that goes beyond the one organization, and I want to stress that it's not about the Legion. And in full disclosure, I'm a member of the Legion, so I have that conflict of interest. And why I want to make sure I'm professing that it goes beyond their interest, that at least has my support, to at least consider it. So, and at the end of the day, we want to get the recommendation from the Planning Commission as they look at that, and this council's opinion. So, more to come on that at probably the next meeting.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've remember seeing a draft or whatever. I kind of like the idea of, I think 30 seconds change is too quick. I think the 5-minute,
exactly,
similar to the grandfather clause, which I think our attorney suggested, is probably more appropriate. So
yes, and what was on Tim McCluskey's slides, I think, was very helpful. And when I looked at the county's language, to be able to potentially take that and make it even more restrictive, like you said, and if it's every 5 minutes,
right, it was the county's language, right? Okay.
But yeah.
Then we also have to deal with, like, State Highway does pull up their electronic signs and just park them somewhere and does their thing, but we probably can't do anything about that, so.
Well, we can certainly make phone calls and remind folks what our.
Yeah, but most of them are, one of them is they're announcing our parade, things like that, so we can.
Exactly.
Can't complain about that.
Well, for the record, I am not for any replication of what Goodwill has right now. We all support the fire department. We gave them an increase in funding based on our last budget discussion. But the movement that is on that sign, the flashiness, if you will, and the time of day that has been actually operating outside of what was grandfathered in, I'm not in favor of that. So any other discussion before we move on?
Not for me.
Great. Okay, we'll jump now into new business. We have the 2023 Arbor Day proclamation.
So this is in your packet. This year's Arbor Day celebration will be Friday, April 28th at 9:15 a.m. on the Millstream Trail right off of Creamery Lane. So there's a group from Centreville Elementary School and a group from Y River Upper School who will be attending this year, and 3 white pines, I hope I got that correct, will be planted. So I was asked to make sure that the council knew that this was happening and to invite you all to the Arbor Day celebration. So, and this proclamation we do every year, and it is one of the requirements we need for our Tree City USA designation as well. So I don't know if you want it read or what, but
We can do that. I'll go ahead and read it. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed that a special day be set aside for planting of trees. And whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas in 2008, the Town Council of Centreville amended Chapter 145 of the Code of the Town of Centreville, which covers the planting, maintenance, and removal of trees within the town. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, lower our heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in the town of Centreville increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Town Council of Centreville proclaims the last Friday in April as Arbor Day in the town of Centreville. And be it further resolved that the town of Centreville urges all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands, and further urges all citizens to celebrate by either planting a tree or maintaining existing trees to promote the well-being of this and future generations of trees in our town. And then, of course, our typical salutation and signatures. Any discussion?
Wholehearted support. Sounds good to me.
Can we go ahead and get a motion then to approve?
I move that we support Arbor Day with this proclamation.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
No.
There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And nobody opposed or abstained. Thank you very much. And I think I can go to that, so I'm looking forward to that. Personnel manual updates discussion. And is that, Crystal, if you want to come forward? I see we have a memorandum request dated April 13th with a packet.
Yes, good evening. This is just a discussion. It's more of just a initial review to allow council members time to go through the personnel manual draft as it is now. I did put in the memo just several highlighted updates. I wasn't going to read through all of them. There's over 20. So, but if you had any questions or comments, I do have on the last, excuse me, at the bottom of the memo, just my goal is for hopefully next month's town council meeting, consideration or seeking council sponsor and approval of the personnel manual to allow time for dissemination and employee training of the new personnel manual. It's one of those situations where the personnel manual is going to be updated, regularly. So the longer that we delay, my concern is more things are just going to keep piling up to make changes. In the memo, it does state that it's been worked on since 2021, initially by Karpinski and his office, law firm, to ensure that the federal and state mandates were in there. Sharon Van Emberg has certainly been involved because she does final review and provides guidance and so forth. So, like I said, this is just more of a discussion. If you have any questions at all regarding any of the content that you've currently read, or if, I'm all ears.
One question that I know I had was, and this is something we've touched on, it was either the last council meeting or the one prior to that, the county's policy, and of course we're using county email, we're going to migrate based on the cloud opportunity that I think was wonderful, by the way. The county's procedure was, in my opinion, a little too narrow, a very short period of time in which emails are stored and then purged. So is that addressed as a matter, or can it be? And if the rest of the council agrees, I just feel like we need to have something in the personal manual that speaks to staff members and their storage of their emails in off network files, that kind of thing.
Correct.
Just-
So, well, and I know there is a, let's see here, we do have in here the information technology, where is it?
The reference to a records retention policy that. the
Yes,
town has,
thank you.
yeah.
Correct. And currently, the records retention policy, we're waiting to hear an update from the state to approve the retention schedule. We also, with regards to the 60-day retention on emails, since we have not yet established our own server IT, we haven't, at least not that I know of, finalized on any of those policies. So certainly that would be an update to the personnel manual. Getting this manual approved will at least allow an easier process to approve them by section versus trying to make various changes in different parts of the personnel manual, since they were more spread out, but yet connected to the same topic. So
She could work on this forever.
Oh,
This
yes.
gets us to a new baseline, and then we can adjust
Exactly.
incrementally so that we can accommodate the desires of council or changes in Maryland law, things of that nature.
And I know that is such a delicate dance to, we know we're going to be compliant, and we're confident in that, of course, but just with records retention, I know a lot of government organizations want to have the most narrow, within the limits of the law, period of time in which they have to hold on to stuff, so then it's not subject to discovery. And I just have been in a couple organizations where a number of employees had everything copied over to this off-network thing, and now that's sort of part of, which I know Sharon could probably comment on whether that's subject to discovery. We don't need to get into that tonight necessarily, but.
Well, actually, we're going to touch on it later, but opportunities here with digitizing our data, our ability to maintain and in an organized and cogent way is greatly enhanced. With that said, the retention schedule lays out specifics on various types of documents. Some of them are forever. Some of them are a very short window, and you get rid of them just because you don't need them. Now, with the amount of data we'll be allowed to store, that's no longer an issue. Now, the reality is that for the past year, we have been once a month going through tens of thousands of documents, decades of documents, scanning them and inventorying them. Even once the retention schedule is approved and we can destroy things, even the destroyed documents have to be inventoried. So the lift for the town staff is still huge, hence we still have the cleaning days. And I want people to understand that if, I think her boxes are procreating. Every time I turn around, there's more
I
boxes.
know.
It's a
I have
bottomless
at
pit.
least 12 to 15 boxes in my office of just separated files,
Got it.
Just separated, that's just people who
just separated
departed
personnel files.
from employment here. So and that's one little tranche of documentation. So the lift that staff has undertaken has been super, so that we can get all this digitized and then destroy it. But I mean, not to digitize once it's scanned in, but we're way behind the curve on compliance with state law, and so we're trying to catch up to that.
Well, I know we've talked about this, of course, intermittently over the last year plus, and I think we're all thrilled that we're in the right direction and appreciate everything that you're doing on that. Are there any questions or comments from the rest of council?
I've only read the first 10 pages, so no other comments.
Yeah, I'm still,
say
I'm
happy
still
reading.
plowing through it, I promise you.
No, but I do ask that, please let me know if there's any comments, suggestions, or any questions that you may have. And I'm hopeful that, in May, the next town council meeting in May, that we could at least consider moving forward with an approval.
It's been seen by our attorney, it's been reviewed by outside counsel. Kevin Karpitsky with Legit, who is an HR attorney. So we feel comfortable bringing this to this body.
And I won't beat
Good
this
start.
horse too much more dead than I did, but the latter part of the comment about retention, of course, is just making sure it's part of our training that just because you hit shift delete does not permanently delete an email. So folks, hopefully are doing the right thing, and I know the majority of them are. But any other comments? Okay. Great, thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, water and wastewater plant full-service operator, award of the bid proposal. Kip, please come forward. Good evening, how are you, sir?
Good. How are you folks doing?
Good.
Okay. As we made you aware, the situation with our water and wastewater operations due to short staffing and stuff, we've had MES operating it, which we are grateful for. They came in short notice for short-term operations. We prepared an invitation for bids, publicly sent out. We arranged a mandatory pre-bid meeting for contractors that wish to bid on it. However, we only had one contractor show up. These contractors are kind of few and far between. There's not a load of them in the area, and the ones that are here are experiencing the same problems that we did with staffing issues and trying to keep qualified staff for operations and everything. With that being said, the bids were received on March 31st and opened. The bid was reviewed. You have before you the amount of the bid, and this current bid is for a 3-year period. We did, just to check base with MES, see what they thought if we were to extend another year's worth of them operating it. The way MES is operating right now, they have one operator 8 hours a day. They have a superintendent that takes care of the monthly operating reports and that type of stuff. They found out one operator 8 hours a day is not enough to cover. Ergo, the reason that we were staffed with a superintendent and 4 operators. The company that actually placed the bid was Susquehanna Operational Services. They looked at the situation, and they actually looked at the situation and felt 5 staff members, superintendent and 4 operators, was right on point for what it should take to operate that, the plant for us. However, when they started putting the numbers together, and this came out of a meeting we had with them this morning to try and negotiate a little bit on the price, they knew that price to operate our water and wastewater was way out of the range of what we could have afforded. So they actually scaled it back. They feel comfortable that they can make it go with 3 operators and a superintendent. And that's the price that's reflected in the price that you have here. And yes, and per the last week's discussion, it's in the budget this way. Staff's recommending we award to Susquehanna for the operating cost of $406,000 for the first year, meeting the negotiated schedule for the next 3 years.
I assume they'll be operating the spray field as well?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
This contract will take place July 1st and will carry to June 30th of next year. The next succession in this contract would start again on July 1st to June 30th of the following year. We did speak a little bit to them also that depending on how the situation goes and everything, if we're happy with it and we don't see things changing as far as being able to build up enough staff to operate ourselves at the end of 3 years, they would be willing to renegotiate for an additional term on it as well.
The one thing I can tell you with this company that many of the companies that are out there doing this kind of work, they put a cancellation clause in it that kind of, you're going to have to go to court and prove that they were doing wrongfully with their operation, or really provide information to prove misservice to be able to get out of the contract before the end of their term, whether it be 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, so on. This company, their normal clause is 90 days notice, and you know, if we're not happy, they don't have a problem with canceling the contract. So.
It has my support. It's in the budget. Any discussion, comments, questions?
I make a motion.
Hold on, if I may, for the folks that, at home that may be watching that haven't been aware, we eat these numbers every day, and the council over the past several weeks has been churning these numbers up as well. This is not a new bill. We were paying for wastewater treatment plant management before. Last year, we added the 197 for MES to take over, which was part of the year. We have, the past several years, underrun on budget because we weren't fully staffed. So this sort of number has been in the budget before. It's not a huge delta. So I just want folks to be aware that this isn't a new bill coming out of the blue.
Thank you very much.
And we did have extensive discussions at last budget session about this as well. And it sounded like we had the support of the other two council members generally.
Yes, and I know there was a preference to really try to create a runway to just move this in a better direction and continue to reduce costs. So I would highly encourage folks at home to take part in visiting QACTV's website to see our last budget session. The discussion and the information that you provided, Kip, was just very, very helpful, very, very thorough in a way that I think was value added. So I know you started to make a motion.
If I may continue.
Yeah, go ahead.
I make a motion to approve the water and wastewater plant full-service operator proposal to Susquehanna Operational Services for the initial 3-year agreement not to exceed $406,000 for the first year.
Is there a second?
I'm going to let you second that.
I'll go ahead and second that. Any further discussion?
I struggle mightily with a 33% difference between these two quotes.
If I can, again, as I said at last week's meeting, budget work session, the reason you see that there is the level of service that MES is providing compared to the level of service we're going to get from this company. MES's number only counts 2 operators.
And you said we get 3 operators and 1 superintendent, correct?
Correct. In this other price, both firms are aware that since MES has been operating it, the 2 staff members that remain with us from the water and wastewater division have transferred to the streets. However, 90% of their time since then has been dedicated to service, replacing, repairing, and maintaining equipment, which is not done by MES. The principals at Susquehanna have assured us this morning a lot of that's going to go away. Their operators are skilled and their business model is set quite a bit different than MES. That's included in their operator's day. Or with MES, if they have an electrical problem in other situations or other municipalities, they call their electrician staff in to work on it, and that's a bill above and beyond the operator. So
We end up paying the delta in manpower.
And I know that would be somewhat tedious, but that's where having that additional info would be helpful in the future. So in addition to what MES may be limited in, we're making up for that with X number of dollars a year out of Hyde.
if MD, like, fined us for noncompliance, I mean, would that come on us, or would it come on Susquehanna?
No, regardless of who's operating MES
Or liability.
It's
or
always our
any
problem.
other, it falls back because
Okay.
that falls on the municipality, the
Okay.
owner of the thing, the system. But with that being said, if it's due to negligence,
Okay.
we do have the power to take them to court to fight that, to recover that.
Do you have any further concerns? Okay. There being no further discussion, we'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And I did not hear anything other than aye, so we'll consider this approved. Thank you for the work on that. We'll
Thank
keep
you.
you up here to go ahead and move to the water tower maintenance. Excuse me, I can't talk this evening. Award of bid proposal.
Okay. For quite a number of years before I started here, Centreville had a maintenance contract on only one of the three towers. Can't explain why it was only on one. What we chose to do was to put this out to bid to include all three towers. The bid was advertised, mandatory bid meeting was held. After that, proposals were due in by the 31st. They were publicly open and read with three companies supplying bids on this project. During the pre-bid meeting and before the end of the term, before the bids were due, we got a number of comments from the contractors explaining the way that they do this maintenance, that they like to spread it out over years rather than try and hold it to what we call a 5-year term. That way it spreads our costs out further with a cheaper per year cost on it. Plus, it helps fall into line with, we're not going to paint a water tower, every 5 years. So, if we have it in a term for 5 years and then wind up putting it out again, and the next thing you know, it's due for painting, it's going to jack the price sky high. The three contractors an addendum was sent out, all the contractors signed that they approved, that they received it and everything. So this contract may be extended longer than the 5-year term. The three bidders were Southern Corrosion, Minoan Inc., and Utility Services Group Water Solution, with the prices ranging from $38,653 a year to the high bid of $163,977 per year.
So real quick, I got to jump in on that.
Yep.
Based on our discussion on the last one, and knowing, that MES was giving us less than the other contractor, what are we missing out on by not accepting the 163? Is there some sort of Cadillac version of?
No, when comparing the bids, they all came back very, very similar as far as their services. I can tell you that knowing that company actually painted the tower here behind the firehouse and the one out to Northbrook in 2014. They did a very good job and everything. However, that was their mainstay, painting towers, not necessarily the maintenance and the inspection. I can't speak to the fact of how many subcontractors they use and that kind of stuff. The other two companies were very close in the bid. Like I say, the Southern Corrosion, $38,563. Utility Services, $39,400. So that tells me that the invitation to bid that we sent out when they come in that close was pretty comprehensive and well understood when two of the contractors are that close in price. So There are a few subtle differences in it. Southern Corrosion, their rates are from year to year figured on the, and forgive me if I get it wrong, CPI, where utility services are always figured on a percentage. So when things are a little lean, you're going to get less of an uptake in the price, but they're locking in at these prices for us here. Southern Corrosion is a very reputable company. They've been in business for many years. Utility Service has been in business for several years. However, they have had many name changes through the years. So,
I move approval of the water tower maintenance proposal to Southern Corrosion as presented and recommended by staff.
Is there a second?
thank you.
I'll go ahead and second that. All in, or any discussion, I'm sorry.
No more discussion.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, no one opposed or abstained. Quick question for you. I just know since I was 12 years old, the original tower that was here is still the same tower. Is there a lifespan on that where at some point in the next 20 or even 30 years, that thing's got to be replaced? Or
No, they're inspected every 3 years, and nothing structurally, it's been fine. It's been well
got a
maintained
good one.
for that time. So no need with concern or anything to worry about replacing it. If it ever got to the point that it needed to be replaced, it's probably going to be for the need for more volume than the structural aspect of it.
Thank you for your hard work, as always. Next up, we have the memo dated the 13th, Centreville Wharf docking additions. Based on previous discussions, is this town clerk to present?
So back in, if you remember, back in January, we discussed that we had received an $87,000 grant from the Waterway Improvement Fund through Department of Natural Resources, where we completed water, electric, lighting, as well as redecking of the dock at the wharf. And we have $36,954 left in that grant. So at the January 5th meeting, we talked about what we wanted to do with that additional money, and the council was in favor of the installation of additional slips. So it would be 2 finger piers that would establish 4 additional slips. So we put it out to bid, and we received 2 bids back. The highest being $36,800, the lowest $22,250. Which is with Big Island Ventures. They actually were the ones who subcontracted with Disson and June back in 2010 with the original boardwalk down there. They also did the gazebos on Front Street. So they are familiar with our little wharf area.
This seems like an easy one. Can we go ahead and get a motion to approve?
I'll move approval. Big Island Ventures to install 2 finger piers as presented and recommended by staff.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion?
Looks like one of the vendors knew how much money we had to spend, and,
Yeah. Give them a tip.
well, a little bit lower, but not low enough. Yeah, it's okay.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, oh, approved, thank you very much. Okay, any correspondence, Madam Clerk?
No, none.
All right, there being none, we'll move on to our reports of boards and commissions. Maryland Municipal League, and regardless of whether council members are here as liaisons, if we do have anything to report in their absence. So I know we have the conference coming up. Anything else to report on behalf of MML?
Nothing else to report from MML except that the conference is coming up, as you mentioned. I think registration is still open, as well as a solicitation for applications to run for the board of directors.
That's right, I did see that email.
They've only gotten, well, so far, Frederick, from the city of Frederick, Eastern Shore hasn't sent anything up, nobody else has sent anything in yet.
Interesting.
At the last thing, they maybe wait till the end to see what names show up on the list and see if they want to.
Exactly. All right, COG, Council of Governments.
Yeah, our next meeting is Wednesday, May 10th, 6:30 up in Sellersville.
Got it.
So if you, well, you know, other council members are welcome to attend, just doesn't have to be me.
Sellersville is an interesting group, and I mean that as a compliment with the stories. I'm not going to go there, but just some interesting dialogue. So highly encourage folks to attend the COG when able. Economic development. I'll just again report that we're on track to have a May 3rd. It's a Wednesday at 7 p.m. It'll be at the Vincent Building. A panel discussion about what does economic development look like in 5 to 10 years. Right now on the panel we have Pat Fox, who of course is on our planning commission, but has been asked to be on the panel based on her background in economic development. We have our local renowned artist, Will Hemsley. We're working to have Heather Tonelli, the county's economic development director, who of course has become increasingly a willing partner for town-focused efforts. And we have 2 other panelists that we're nailing down. So it's not a town council or town of Centreville sponsored event. It's something I'm doing individually just as a liaison for obviously a board that we have paused strategically. But highly encourage everybody to come. And then Carolyn, if you don't mind, and if there's, without objection from my fellow council members, if we could advertise that at least on the site, that way if 3 council members do want to attend or more, we've got that covered, and that's all we
You
need
don't,
to do.
are you, do you have any, you
Not
don't have
discussing
to-
any business.
No, do you have any flyer or anything that you're doing?
I will. Can I get that to you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll just add it.
And the one thing we were waiting on was, and Bruce, our illustrious QACTV rep this evening, did inform me that QACTV is going to be there to cover. So that was one of the things that we were waiting on to see if we wanted to go ahead and delay it. But now that we can get that out, I think it's going to be really good. So definitely welcome everybody to attend. Parks Advisory Board.
Let me back up
Oh,
for
go
a second
ahead.
if I can. Is there a reason the town is not sponsoring or supporting that?
I truthfully didn't even think to ask, not because I didn't think there would be support for that, but if there is support, I think that would be really, really good. So, in fact, if it helps to do that with all 5 of us, the thought was to present, so it's an open book test, really. This isn't going to be a gotcha event to any of those panelists. So I've invited them to submit sample questions that they think are worthy of discussion. I would encourage, if you have any suggestions, I'll compile that. And our first meeting, well, I guess we really don't have time, do we, since it's May 3rd? Is there enough interest this evening? I'm guessing we have your support. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. Well, by consensus, I don't think we need a motion on that, and I will, just as a point of good order and discipline, just reach out to our president, vice president, and let them know that was the discussion and that we're in favor of doing that. I'll put together a flyer that's not too fancy, not too detailed. Get that to you. Thank you very much for that support, and you as well, sir.
Sure.
Parks Advisory Board, I know we talked about Arbor Day, so we do have that coming up. Anything else exciting to? No, okay. Planning Commission. Do you want to report on that, or?
I did not, they had a meeting last night.
Oh.
They did not.
So
They did
nothing
not.
significant
They
to
did.
report?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll proceed with department heads, our town manager. Go right
Just
ahead.
a few things to go over. Little Kidwell Green Street extension, groundbreaking anticipated the next couple weeks on that. There's going to be some planning meetings to be held with the county before we get into that. Comcast is coming to Queen Anne's County. Found that out from the county today. I don't have any details, just letting you know.
Stop it, wait a minute. That is true?
That is true.
Wow, I meant that in
yeah,
a
I've heard that.
positive, stop it.
I've heard that too, so.
I'm just going to go out on a limb that if we had a show of hands right now of everybody that's thrilled to hear there might be competition, that it would be unanimous, so.
But they're in Kent Island so far. By the time they get out here, they probably just will buy out the other
Don't speak that into existence.
company, yes.
I apologize. Please,
okay.
Please continue.
Yeah, we've talked about a lot of softwares during the budget sessions, and I am looking at ESRI data, ESRI. It's a digital mapping and analytic software that looks at your town's infrastructure, locations, materials, risks, things of this nature. Now, on the surface, I've got a copy of the Master Utility Replacement Plan of Easton. Maps where your risks are associated and different things. I think that the best exemplar I can give you is they looked at, and I think I've talked to the council about this before, Easton looked at all of their infrastructure and said, let's start with the oldest, work to the newest. And what they found was that pre-World War II iron and steel was in better shape than post-World War II iron and steel. Mm-hmm. The degradation happened during the war years when the effort was focused on support to the Army. They also found that their electrical infrastructure put in the 70s during the oil embargoes and problems that used a petroleum-based product is where they're having their greatest problems in their electrical infrastructure. And I would dare to hypothesize that in 20 years we're going to see the effects of COVID and the supply chain issues and infrastructure problems. Near to home here in Queen Anne's County, when you look at the analysis here, it's not just where are we, what's the condition, it's what kind of soil do we have, what are we going to put into that soil. Queen Anne's County has got some pipes they're replacing that are only 20-year-old, and you know how old the stuff we had under Liberty Commerce was, because they put ductile iron into corrosive soil. So they're having to replace miles of infrastructure because they didn't have those analytics 20 years ago. So I'm doing a little more research, but I think there's value added, and Eric, I'll speak to your desire to plan that with this data, it changes our prospectus looking out to say, yes, okay, if we don't do this, we may run into things where we put something in, it was the wrong material for that soil type, and we ended up having to replace it again. And I'm looking at what we're trying to get from the federal coffers for Belvedere and Windsor and Glendale. So this is going to happen very soon, that we're going to be doing infrastructure, crossing our fingers that we get that money. And if we do it wrong, even if it's somebody else that was footing the bill, then the corrective action is going to come back and bite us far sooner than we would like. Mm-hmm. So my initial assessment is this is something that we really need, and more to follow. And the data gathering and all, Salisbury University does that, and so does Axis Geospatial, headquartered in Easton.
And I just wanted to draw attention. I'm seeing nods from Public Works, so that's great that folks are excited about that. Continue, please. Sorry.
Yeah. And in the budget, we have our new electricity numbers. You know, when we first started talking about this, it was triple, and we're just over a doubling of the number. And it's at 30 months, so we'll see what happens in 2024 and see if we can we'll be able to readjust. You have in your packet the report from the police department, and I will leave it to council if you wish to call Chief Police to discuss any of the parts of that or have any questions for him.
Yeah, do you mind coming up just for a second? Anything specific, Chief? Welcome tonight. Thank you for all you do. Just anything that you want to draw our attention to in the report, above and beyond the...
Outside of what you have in your packet this evening, I don't have any new business per se, but if you do look at the month of March for the review from the police department, at the very bottom on our special assignments, I would like to just bring some things to the council's attention. You'll see that the COMAR says 100% compliance. That means that we've been audited by the state of Maryland for our code compliance, and we were in 100%. Along with the Maryland Police Training Commission, what they did was they oversee our training of our officers and certifications. We were in 100% compliance with them as well. So, I mean, it's pretty outstanding for our police department. Also with the defensive tactics instructor training, that was Lieutenant Larimore. He offers instructor assistance and training down at our police academy, and he is highly recommended, and we are glad to have him as part of that training program. Obviously, the budget sessions are self-explanatory. Meters training, it pertains to our ability to access the state systems to validate driver's license and vehicle registration. So that's what that system is about. So all of our officers, along with some of the county personnel, have come to our agency to train under Ms. Laura, our administrative assistant. She does their training for the county as well. I think that's getting spread out a little bit now. I think the county's got a couple personnel now that it can do their training for them, so that will relieve some of the training off of her for the county. The physical fitness assessments, in the last year, the state has mandated that all police departments complete a physical fitness assessment mandate. What that includes with a 100-yard run of sorts, traversing over certain obstacles up and down 2 flights of stairs, et cetera, et cetera. It's like 5 different events that you have to participate in. It's for officers below the administrative staff. However, in our department, our entire staff participated, to include myself, and I'm proud to say that we were in 100% compliance with that and passed.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
it was a good deal.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It was a little bit of a task. In the month of March, we did hire 1 new officer, Officer Sam Fairkeen. He came from the Fredericksburg Police Department as a lateral transfer. I will be introducing him to the council here in the next couple sessions, along with a couple other items of interest from the police department. But that's all I had for this evening.
I do have very quick questions, and feel free to give quick answers.
Sure.
First one, anything that you can update us on Police Accountability Board?
At this time, I have nothing for that one.
And I didn't think there was. I know that's kind of crawling its way to implementation, as I understand it.
Slow process.
And then I had a conversation with Lieutenant Mark Meal from the Sheriff's Department, and I guess they're sending 3 folks to the specialized field sobriety program in light of marijuana legalization.
Yes.
There's increased drug driving, I guess, and it is specialized. So are we sending anybody to that?
So it's interesting that you bring that up, because I had a conversation with one of our newer officers, Officer Joseph Beans. I introduced him at one of the last council meeting sessions. He was with the younger officer, Miss Natalie Amaya. He is a field training officer for standard field sobriety training when it comes to like DUI, DWI type. And it doesn't just mean alcohol, it means like drug-induced driving as well. So he asked me yesterday if he could attend one of what they call a DRE, which is a drug recognition expert training. Mm-hmm. There is some coming up, in which I'm more than happy to send him to.
Yeah, I just think that's a good
It's
idea,
much
because my understanding is if you do have that suspicion, unless you bring that trained person out,
Right.
you really can't do a whole lot.
Well, it's unfortunate in the county, we don't have as many officers trained in that field or that area specifically to testify within the courts. So this will allow him to give testimony as well as an expert
Great.
witness.
Well, thank you. Any questions or comments from the council? Thank you, Chief, for all that you do.
Thank you.
And please offer our congratulations to the entire team for the 100%
Yeah, absolutely.
pass on the physical fitness assessment. The council, if we had participated, I'm convinced we would have 100% too,
Thank goodness the rest of the staff didn't have to do that.
myself excluded. All right, town attorney, anything? All right, thank you, ma'am. Finance officer, Ms. Luffman. All right, Public Works, Kip, anything further? Crystal, anything else from Crim? I didn't even finish the thought. Anything else from HR? I know you said no, but I wanted to make sure I sounded somewhat sensible. Town clerk, anything further?
I just wanted to talk real quick about we have been working really hard with our, like Chip talked about earlier, with our cleaning days, and so we are in the midst of our records retention policy has been submitted to the state. However, we can't get approval until we have to inventory everything that we have. So that is what's taking the time. And being able to have our cleaning days go through, scan, submit to our storage place and online has been a huge help. So, so we're getting there. But yeah, tens of thousands of documents have been scanned in years and years of, so.
Well, you guys have come up with a really good model, because this daunting task, if you say to everybody, we're going to try to get it done this week or whatever time frame you set, by doing this in a recurring way, you guys have created sort of a cyclical recognition of the importance of doing this. And now it's part of the staff's mentality.
We all look forward to it, and it's not, I don't think any one of us come to work saying, oh, we don't have to work today, we're closed. It's like, okay, we're coming in today and we're getting our stuff done, and, you know.
It's a singular focus. It allows us to get something that has to be done, but in the day in and day out, things moving through the office, it's like, that'll have to wait. But this we can say, okay, we get caught, because it's a lot to get caught up on.
It
It's-
is.
Well, thank you both for your leadership in this. Absolutely. Anything further? All right, we'll move then to our final citizens forum. Anybody else that would like to speak tonight? Yes, please, come on up.
Hello, Town Council members. Kara Willis, full disclosure, I'm the chair of the Planning Commission currently. Just wanted to sort of bring up some points to be considered as you're considering crafting some draft language regarding the sign ordinance. At the last meeting, Councilmember Kaiser had, I believe it was her that had brought up the possibility of a special exception. There are some other sort of loopholes that would have to happen. I guess what I'm getting at is there's not just one thing that can be tweaked in order for this thing to work.
Exactly.
For instance, with the special exception, the mechanism of that would be that it would go through the Planning Commission primarily for a recommendation to the Board of Appeals, given the fact that in the design standards, which are part of the comprehensive plan, we could not make a favorable recommendation. So that's just one of the things off the bat, glaring problem. So if you're going to say that, well, then that means that, okay, so now we're talking about changing the language of the design standards and going into the, and that's just at a very baseline thing. So there's a lot of different layers to this. Sharon had talked about the monitoring of content, and that was something that in the design of the, when we were working on the drafts previously, I think that it needs to be impressed. It's important to recognize that when we're creating the sign code or making changes to it, that this can't be about what is going to be on the sign itself.
Absolutely agree.
So we have to think about this as in it's an electric thing until it's plugged in and it says something. After that, that's not what we're, so the guidelines with that, I think, need to be also considered when we're thinking about who is worthy of having it, for example, and what that particular sign in a particular place could be used for. Beyond that, and this has also been touched on, the logistics regarding the implementation of code. Obviously, the next thing would be enforcement of that. Case in point, the Goodwill Fire Department. With that sort of thing, the town kind of puts themselves in a tight spot where enforcement of a sign that is in front of an institution that gives so much to the town, the perception of becoming the bad guys when we have to go and say, you're doing it wrong, that's not a good look for a community standpoint.
And if you'll go ahead and take another 30 seconds.
I would also like to say, I guess just kind of wrapping up, we keep talking about how we don't have a full-time zoning administrator, and this is something that the Planning Commission had, I think, sent to the council formally years ago, requesting one. This exact kind of thing, drafting this kind of language, making sure that these decisions are implemented correctly, that sort of having somebody on staff to do that would be, would in and of itself solve a lot of problems. For example, we wouldn't have 4 non-conforming signs that we had to create specific language for in the code. So I would champion that, and if I need to come to a budget to do that, budget session to do that, I will.
I'm glad you brought that up, and I regret the fact that now that you're saying it, I'm like, damn, that excuse my language, that was something that I wish we had talked about in our budget hearings. That being said, we are able at any given time to bring up an issue, and I know I would be willing to sponsor that, as I'm sure Council Vice President Kaiser would, as you so reminded us. So I'll talk with Council Vice President Kaiser offline and just see if that's something that, if there's support with the council, that we could look at finding a way to bring it from part-time. Because right now, is it 20 hours a week?
The zoning administrator?
Correct.
We don't-
10.
Well, we don't have a zoning
But
administrator.
I am your zoning administrator.
I'm sorry, I mean,
He's
code
here a lot
enforcement
more than that.
officer.
Code enforcement is about 10 hours a week. It's, not to dive too deep into it, but I would rather have a town engineer before I got into code enforcement. With all the things that we've got coming that are going to run through DPW, we don't have an engineer. Now, we had a firm once upon a time to the tune of, the last time we had it in 2010, $750,000 a year.
And it's been that long since we've had it.
It's been that long since we've
Okay.
had it. And I think having an engineer to kind of look at, not just like the software I'm talking about, what does the town need to look at these projects with a critical eye? I'm not an engineer, Kip's not an engineer. So I think that's something we can discuss, and I'll proffer something later to the council along the lines of what we did with our program manager.
If I could interrupt, you sort of derailed the citizen
So, yeah.
comment topic that was going on. So.
But what I was going to say was that what she's asking, if you would like, and Council Vice President Kaiser would like, is to say to the Planning Commission, we would like this relooked at, and then they can set a set of recommendations to the council for you to say, like this, don't like this,
Yeah.
come back with more data. That's, in short, tasking the body.
Yes, and I know we beat this horse dead, but I'll beat it one more time, and that is just the idea, and I think you've said it, prior Councilman Tim McCluskey said it earlier. If we've got rules on the book and we're not enforcing them, then my attitude is, why don't we just tell the Legion, go ahead and put up a sign, because we don't even need to change the ordinance. Now, I would never do that. That's not how I think. But that perception's out there, and how do you make the argument legally to somebody? Because somebody could easily come forward and say, hey, you're telling me I can't put my sign up, but Goodwill has had their sign operating at night for 5-10 years now, so how do you, so you get it.
The danger is setting a precedent.
Yes.
And I'll follow up on that, just one more thing, that the town has kind of follows its own rules. And so when I hear something like your desire to maybe have a signage, digital signage that would allow for emergency content, if it were on town property, if a sign like that existed on town property, I believe, and this is something that you could speak to council to, that there are maybe a different set of criteria and rules.
Oh,
In other words,
absolutely.
we're not enforcing it upon anyone else. The
Yes.
town itself is its own, master of its own domain.
Yes.
So,
Sovereign immunity, I think, is the term.
there you go.
Exactly.
So, just
Thank
some-
you
just
for
some
coming
suggestions.
tonight and for the additional history, because you definitely have it. You're the institutional continuity for planning.
For better or for worse.
Thank you for your work. All right, we'll proceed now. Oh, let me just ask anybody else that would like to speak. Okay. All right, we'll conclude with our council roundtable. Councilman Worth, anything further?
Nothing more from me.
Okay, I just have the reminder that our first of 2023, first Friday, will be Friday, May 5th. We have Guthrie Matthews performing, and I'll send some traffic to Public Works and the Police Department, just our standard stuff that we do the day before and the day of. Encourage everybody to come out. We're hoping the weather's going to be nice, as it has been. And I apologize, I skipped over you in the order on the agenda. That's because I wanted to save the
Round
best
robin.
for last. That's
Going round robin.
Councilman Beecham.
Nothing to offer.
All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.